Okay, welcome everyone to another fascinating episode of the Infinite Wisdom series. We are so very happy to have you here today. And we have a very special guest today, Lorna Gale. Lorna is passionately leading a movement supporting people in experiencing their sexual and spiritual wholeness. She comes to us with a focus on divine feminine power, sexuality and leadership, and divine masculine power, sexuality and service and support. Lorna helps clients unravel and see through the thoughts and stories of sex and spirit, feminine and masculine, as separate so they can experience the freedom and joy of living true you erotically alive. I love that. Lorna, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ross.
We
Thank you,
are
Gary.
so
Great
happy
to
to
be
have
with
You're
you
you.
here.
welcome. So before we get started into the interview, just as people are coming in,
Mhm.
please go ahead and comment in the chat. Let us know where you're chiming in from, and if as we're going through the interview today, if you have any questions that come up, please drop them in the comments. And don't be shy. We know that a lot of people shy away from this topic, but don't be shy. Go ahead and drop them in, and this is a place for us to explore a new area that we don't normally talk about on the channel, but we thought it was important to kind of bring this to the audience and look at different aspects of life because it's a part of the infinity matrix. It's a very important part of it that for whatever reasons, our societies tend to shy away from. So go ahead and tell us in the comments where you're chiming in from. We got Charlotte, North Carolina with Kate. We got New Zealand with Olivia. And just have them keep coming in. And then again, if you have any questions as we go through the interview, you can drop them in there. We'll bring them in and let Lorna know and see if she can answer them for you.
Mhm.
All right.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Fantastic. Let me get myself situated here. There we go. Now I can see how. Oh, yeah. So we do have a very international crowd today, so that's fantastic.
Beautiful.
And so let's get going.
Yeah.
Lorna, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. So first of all, it's just wonderful to be here, and I'm really excited to share and talk about this. So I'm here in Canada, on the west coast of Canada, and it's actually interesting. What brought me to this work is I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, a wife, and I'm just really passionate, as Ross said. I'm just really passionate about bringing an awareness and an opportunity for people to really experience their wholeness, both sexually and spiritually. And it really comes from my own journey, as often our work does. Our missions in the world come from our own journey. I grew up in a religious context, a very loving home, loving environment, and in there, this whole idea of sex was just as culturally we know it was very restrictive, very conservative, very judgmental. It belonged in this container, marriage, save yourself for marriage. And, I was a good girl and I did that. And it was actually an interesting thing how years later, and I'll get more into my story a bit as we go along, that I really started to realize how much that had an impact on me. Because if I was to save myself for marriage, it meant that, number one, my body and my sexuality were not mine, and I lived according to that. So it's almost like, I was this free spirit, and as soon as I got married, up come the turtlenecks and the baggy clothes, like don't show anything. And and it was quite an amazing thing to be in that journey, and in my journey of awakening, my what I call my midlife sexual awakening, that's brought me to here. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm gonna invite some more questions that maybe from your audience, our audience today, and see what's there, as well as from you gentlemen as well.
For sure.
Awesome.
Myself, this is something that has fascinated me, and that's what kind of brought us together, is
Mm-hmm.
that this is such a topic that it's it almost kind of has a fuse to it. You know, I mean, people, you don't, when you bring this subject up, you don't know which direction a person or how they're going to respond.
Mhm.
They're either going to pull back, or sometimes they get angry, sometimes they get very shy, sometimes they just shut up, sometimes they turn around and walk away. And where does all that come from? I mean, I'm sure in your experience, you've looked at the history of the, I guess we can call it the sexual revolution. Where does all of this stem from?
I would say such a great question. It's always neat to be able to look back. And I look at things on two different levels. On one level, there's this aspect we can look where historically the church was the center of the society, of our communities. And in there, it was this aspect. I think it's recognizing that there's such a power to our sexuality. Why? Because we come from sex, that creative power of sex. And so when we know that power that's there, that when people know themselves sexually, they also know themselves spiritually. They know themselves wholly that way. And so if that's the case, where's the role for the church? If that's their job, to try to create this journey of this human journey trying to connect to the spirit, well, if there's no division there, then what's the purpose of it? And so to be able to slowly, I think like any good story or any good thing that's unraveling and taking shape, it's little by little things get put on there. I love going back to the Garden of Eden, and in fact, my private Facebook group that I have for women, because this last year I've been needing to go online. I focused on the women, and I'll come back to why I did that way. But there was the Garden of Eden, when you look at it, this whole aspect of, here we are in this divine space and this unity with God, and all of a sudden this apple, this tree of wisdom and knowledge, and, don't partake of it, and Adam, did so, but somehow Eve is the one that did that, or, Lilith, as well, as we talk about Lilith in that role, but Eve doing that. So suddenly, by this apple, and it's actually interesting, an apple is an aphrodisiac. And so this whole idea representing this sexual connection or natural aspect of who we are, offers it to Adam, and in that, all of a sudden, everything unravels. There's this disconnection from the divine, from God, right? And put clothes on. All of a sudden, shame comes into place, and so and then it becomes this. Okay, it's now heaven and hell. You blew it, woman. You're responsible for the fall of mankind. And so there it becomes this journey of woman somehow being demonized, and men. Then when we look at it, what's happened in our last, how many millennia, as the patriarchy has done its deed, it's almost like, as I've come to experience, it's almost like we know what it's like when that masculine energy is uncontained, undirected, and just runs amok, taking away the feminine leadership and demonizing it, putting shameful on it, making it seem as if that's separate from God. It just further reinforces this idea of taking away the power of women, power of sexuality, and reinforcing how there's so much more that needs to be forgiven, and all the sins that come with that. And so to be able to look at when we come, and this is, I think, a big part of where my work has come to. I started off as a somatic sex educator, really supporting people coming into their sexuality, and really starting to see my spiritual journey, my sexual journey, seemingly separate, but at some point they came together. And recognizing that the divine is feminine in the sense of it's energetic and it's the flow, it's the creation. And the masculine is that form, that structure that says, here I am in support and service to the feminine. So we in this body, no matter what genitals we have, no matter what, whether it's the feminine or masculine, it's operating out, at play, is that this form is masculine. It's that structure that allows this feminine, energetic flow to be experiencing this human journey. So in some ways, I've kind of jumped ahead to, instead of going linearly to where my things are right now. It just seems really important to set that context, because from in there, rather than sort of this trudging through and how do we get here, it's kind of let's look at a bigger picture and see, now how did that come to place, like you say, Ross, how did that come to happen? And so when we look at this cultural aspect of even feeling, and that's consent and feeling are my two foundations of how I work with people. And when we look at feeling, that looking at, say, women and men, and I very intentionally choose women and men, and I honor and allow that there are all genders, no genders, we're all there. And because we have operated in a world of dualism, of masculine and feminine, right and wrong, good and bad, I purposely choose that, to focus on that, so that we can bring in this journey of coming home to it as one, not only within ourselves, but then seeing how it reflects around us. And I think also then this aspect of the feminine, the flow of things needs that. When we look at, I took part of my training comes from the tantric perspective. We talk about tapas and spanda, yin and yang. And there's the yin and yang in the masculine, and there's the yin and yang in the feminine. And so there's different parts that we each have within us. I'm going to pause there. I've just shared a lot, and I'm just going to sort of let that percolate a little bit and some things settle in. And I know that for a lot of listeners, this is kind of like, whoa, this is a big piece. And somehow I think it's important to, sometimes we can feed little bits, and sometimes it's important to, in an immersion, sort of like dumping into the deep end of the pool, to be able to just kind of like, whoa, that's a lot to process. And sometimes that's what it takes as well, to have a really huge shift in a perspective, to be able to then give us a starting place to take those small steps.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So when you have clients that come in for your services, what is the ideal client, or maybe not the ideal client? What are they looking for? What is there a gap? Is there a hole or a void that they're trying to fill? Or are they just simply looking for answers? Or are they looking for techniques? What are they looking for when they're coming to find you?
Mm-hmm. I would say that it really varies, and perhaps by gender. The majority of women who arrive to me are wanting to connect to their sexuality. They're somehow feeling disconnected from it, whether it's just, maybe coming from a religious background, or not having that place of being able to explore their bodies, and get to know it. I mean, when you think about it, for a male body, the penis, the cock is, outside. Every time a male pees, they're making contact with their genitals. Well, for a woman, it's hidden. And there's, a touch, with the toilet paper as we wipe. And so there's this disconnection. I remember doing a retreat where I was leading some women through genital mapping. Let's do a journey of your genitals, and so coaching them through. These are the names, these are the parts. This is, okay, touch it and feel what it feels like. Just be there, breathe with it. And one 73-year-old woman said, because I set them up with on their back jacks with their coconut oil and their mirrors. And this 73-year-old woman said, I have never seen this part of my body before. So women often come because they want to connect or reconnect to their sexuality. Some have come with sexual abuse, whether it's been rape, whether it's been abuse at the hand of a family member or a neighbor. There's often that. So that seems to be the theme for women coming to me is, I want to reconnect to my sexuality. I'm feeling shut down. I used to be sexual. I got married, and now things just aren't there like they used to be. For men, what they come to me for, or arrive to me for, is it's often with a sense of they just are looking for physical touch, and they say they either have premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. Those are the three main things. What's interesting in each one of those, sometimes I think of one man in particular who came session after session, and it was all he could do was just to receive and to feel and sink into feeling that touch. And I think that comes as well from where, as boys in our culture, that boys are taught that they are sexual. You know, boys will be boys, men will be men, and you know that thing about being studs. But they're told don't feel emotions. They're taught that. It's modeled for them. You know, toughen up. You're a boy. Don't be a sissy. Are you being a wimp? You know, you know, buck up. You know, stop crying. So men. So there's that, and then on the other side, women are taught to be emotional. That's who they are. But don't be sexual. Don't feel sexual. So hence coming to that place of I want to connect to my body. I want to connect to my
Big
sexuality.
disconnect, yeah, for sure.
Very much so. So the men, on the other hand, what I find is fascinating is that the majority of men who have arrived to me for sessions with premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction, sometimes it is that. More often it's about being able to connect into feeling.
Mhm.
And so when I was doing hands-on body work prior to the pandemic, and looking forward to getting back into that again, it was about just letting them feel, connect into their feeling their bodies, and sometimes that's this connection
Mhm.
that way, and to let their whole body be this erotic area, you know, not just the penis being, you know, here's this genital, you know, that is this sexual organ. It's kind of, can you let your whole body be your sexual organ, your
Sure,
erotic,
because then if
your
that
erotic zone?
focus is on just that one spot and it's not working, then you're not working, right? So it's and so that starts that cycle.
Hmm.
And you know, I think that that disconnect from emotion that happens, you know, there's you have sex and then there's the emotion, and that growing up. And I think again, it like you said, on the women's side it's just the opposite. There's this gap, right? And so how do we build that gap back?
Hmm. I would say that in many ways it comes to an understanding not only of ourselves
Mhm.
and to be able to see ourselves in our wholeness, you know, the feminine inside, the masculine inside, to know that we are sexual erotic beings. I think
Mhm.
that's absolutely key. And from there, it's to be able to understand the other, what's seen as a polarity, you know,
Mhm.
of the other gender, if you will, and and what I have from my own experience, on multiple levels, to be able to, through my work and my personal experience, to be able to see and understand the heart of men is, it just continues to crack my heart open.
Mhm. Yeah.
And and that's where it seems the men who come to me, you know, are saying erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, is because I want to be there. I want to please my wife. I want to be there for my girlfriend. It's how can
Mhm.
I be there in service and support to her? Please help me. And I think that's been such a key piece in me coming to an understanding of the women when they know what they want,
Mhm.
to be able to say to their partner, you know, this is what I want. And I think of my husband, you know, he says, anything you want, I will move heaven and earth for you.
Mhm.
And I think that as women, when we've been taught your bodies aren't yours, your sexuality isn't yours, it's kind of like, well, what right do I have to say anything? I don't know about it. How can I tell you? And
Yeah.
so this incredible privilege I have of supporting women and coming in to be at home in their bodies, in their own sexuality. What would you like? I don't know. That's okay. Take a moment. I'm here with you. Let's find out what you like. Let's do some explorations. And then from there, they can start to explore on their own and to be able to communicate with a partner if they're with a partner, on their own if they're on their own. Be able to, okay, I like this, or I don't like that, or I didn't used to like this and now I do like it. And so
Mhm.
it's really quite amazing.
That's great.
Hmm.
That's great. So that's being home in their sexuality. And then you also talk about moving beyond identity into embodiments. Tell me about that. That's
Hmm.
interesting to me.
Okay. I think that there's, embodiment is, a word that's coming up more and more in our culture, in our world,
Mhm.
and it's that aspect of. I would say it's that from one perspective, we can look at connecting to the body, to feel what's happening, be present to the body. We're so much thinking about what's going on and thinking about what we need to do and all these tasks and stuff like that, that we're not always feeling there. So as we
Mm.
start to become present to, listen to, and feel what's happening in the body, we start to become aware of that embodiment piece. And to take it to another level as well is, and one of my mentors and teachers, Scott Killaby, one of the quotes from him is, awareness of what's happening in the body not only awakens us to the life that's all around us, but it awakens us to the realization that we are life itself.
Nice.
Yeah. And so we tend to think of it's this journey of becoming embodied.
Mm.
And I teach that it's the awakening to the realization that we are spirit embodied here. And let's
Mhm.
clear those layers, those blinders, if you will, that keep us from that realization.
That's awesome. And I like that. I like that there's that progression into that, because I think that a lot of people, have this idea when you talk about, sex work and helping people with the romance and the eroticism. They think it's just bang, 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 bang. That's all that's they don't realize that there is this spiritual element and this evolution of self that can happen from that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that's great. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we think that one of the gifts of being human is to play and to have fun, and so there was times
Mhm.
where the sexuality is, and one of the posts that you would put in the group was that aspect of are you super serious in your interactions, are
Mhm.
you playful, and it's not even about one being right or wrong, good or bad, or better than the other. It's just
Right.
that awareness of it. And
Hmm.
when we start to feel like, okay, this is how I operate, it's kind of like, well, what if there's another way? What if there's another way you could operate? And another way you could play and experience? And what would it be like if that was there? And I think that's a big part of it is, going from missionary position to, well, that's the way, that's the ultimate way. It's kind of like, is it? That's the way we've been conditioned to think or whatever. And there's so
Yeah.
many more ways to, for positions, for pleasure, for comfort, for different stages in life. A woman's pregnant, it makes a difference of what position she can be in, and that type of thing. How deep the man can penetrate, or how deep a toy, a dildo can penetrate.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of different things that way. Audre Lorde, another one, I love her quote is, we tend to think of the erotic. And when I think of erotic, we think of sexual and erotic. Well, what's the difference? And I love her quote because it
Mm.
seems to be really a neat way. When we talk about having sex, often we think of penis and vagina. That's sex. And if it's same
Yeah.
gender, it's, where do the parts fit together? So
Yeah.
I love her quote. She says, we tend to think of the erotic as an easy, tantalizing sexual arousal. I speak of the erotic as the deepest life force, a force which moves us toward living in a fundamental way.
Cool.
So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's
So,
nice.
yeah, so it just really allows us to be on the whole spectrum and not be stuck on anything, but to really be able to, in any moment, what do I feel like? And that's where in my work I get this incredible privilege again of being able to support people in coming into their own experience, being true to them, letting go of those old paradigms, those old conditionings, those old programs that say this is how you are, this is how you shouldn't be. Again, I talk about the shroud of shame of kind of like it's not only about getting naked, perhaps in a physical sense, but getting naked of those old garments that we've worn that kept us hidden to our true nature as sexual erotic beings.
Mm.
Exactly. And that's where my fascination comes mostly is because you've talked about it many times as far as our conditioning and stuff. Well, where are these people learning these conditioning? Are they I mean, you touched on it, way back with, Adam and Eve, if we want to go in that direction. But, you have new generations now that are coming up. I mean, are they learning this from their parents? Are they learning this from TV or video or social media? Where do all of these conditions, as you call them, which are perfect, where does this conditioning come from? Where does it stem from?
Mm,
It seems in some cases that it's just kind of it's innate.
mm,
It's just like a majority of people are automatically shy, as far as getting naked in front of another person. They just are. I mean, where does this all come from? Where does it stem from?
mm. I would say I use the term taught and caught. Some things are very specifically
I like
taught,
that.
and some
Okay.
things are caught from what they see
Mhm.
around us, those things that we see by example, by modeling in the home, in school, in church, in our society. Even
Mm.
this whole idea of sex selling. I remember back as a part of my sexual awakening, it became the part of, I want to be a prostitute. I want to be
Hmm.
able to do something that I love and get paid well for it.
Mhm.
And that didn't happen. And I took a different route where I got to use my own aliveness to be able to be witness to other people in their journey. To be, say, this a priestess, if you will, this witness to this facilitator to people connecting in, because by and large, what's important is when people come in and connect to themselves. So these conditionings we often, they're so subtle. And even now, I still am finding things that come up. It's kind of like, wow, that is amazing how deep that goes. So, for example, one of these things of being taught that the woman is for the man. And again, in a skewed perspective of the lens that I see and experience life through, of the feminine leading, the masculine being there in support of, is that when we turn things around, this whole aspect of looking at things in a mirror, that we see things in the opposite way. So the woman for the man is putting things in the opposite way. And I remember my niece got married about, I don't know, 20 years ago, and at her reception, one of my sisters read out this thing from the home ec journals, from the 1950s and 1960s.
Oh no.
And you can imagine what's on there, right? So the woman, prior to her husband arriving home, make sure dinner is there and the aroma, greets him when he arrives. Make sure his slippers are ready, his newspaper is ready. Ask him how his day went, and have his slippers ready. Do not share anything of your day. Do you want to disrupt him? And people in the group are just laughing, and I'm sitting there with tears running down my face because I thought, that's how I've lived. I thought that's how I was supposed
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So it's been, so I say it, and even now some of those things are still coming up, of kind of,
Mhm.
how do I continue this journey of re-owning myself, my sovereignty, my body, my sexuality, my ability to be in this world and bring forth my gifts. And I am all for being mothers. I am all for being wives and all of those things, and the stay-at-home dads. So I celebrate all of it, however it is and what works for everyone in their own way. And to be able to look at where these conditionings come from. As far as sex, it's like you say, as we spoke when we first opened, it's a topic that's not talked about. It's
Mhm.
like money and religion and politics, right? You don't talk
Yeah.
about those things, right? We can talk about the weather, but don't talk about sex. And I say, yes, let's talk about sex, because that's when we start to naturalize it. So when we start to say, it's as natural as breathing. Like I say, we come from it. So I think our messages that are taught there, and when I brought out that thing about the sexuality piece about the prostitution, is it's okay to it's, just drawing that it's okay for sex to sell, advertisements for this and that, but it's not okay to sell sex.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a
Yeah.
real twist. It's kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. So we're
Mhm.
getting these mixed messages all along. When men and women don't know about their own bodies, that discomfort is passed on. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
admit that I don't know about my body, that I don't know about how to please my wife, or I don't know how to know what to ask for. And so that gets
Yeah.
perpetuated. It gets relayed down to our children, even without even necessarily talking about it. So I say, talk about sex in our homes. And one of the things that I love about what I get to do as well is to help people become aware of their own conditionings, their own shut down areas, their own areas of shame, so that as they open up to that and reclaim the power that's there, from that place, then they can create a whole different environment for their children or their partners or their other people that they know of to live in and to be immersed in that. And it'll be a little, in some ways, a bit by bit,
Yeah.
their journey, but it's sometimes because they're so ingrained that we don't know. Even I think the big part about homosexuality being one of the big, our first things, coming out of the closet, of that I prefer, male being male, male with male, and later it was, female to female, and it's kind of, oh, I like both, and I like none, and I like all, and it's all
Mhm.
that piece. So I say it's bringing sex out of the closet, bringing our sexual erotic nature out of the closet, and bringing it back into its light of its rightness, its wholeness, its pureness, its divinity, its the sacredness of it. So
Well, there's
That's
a
awesome.
we have a comment on the stream where
okay.
somebody had asked if this was a Christian channel, and responded back, no, it's not. We're not specifically that. And she goes, I was asking because what she is teaching does not line up with scriptures. Sex is an act of worship between husband and wife, and scripture to tells us to flee from sexual immorality.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you
What
say?
other kind of resistances do you get? Because I could see that as a resistance. People
Right.
close off because of their preconceived ideas of what it is you teach, right? So, what's the kind of resistance you get after you answer that? Obviously.
Hmm. Certainly, there's that is one.
Mhm.
I remember a workshop that I did when I posted about reclaiming, like women reclaiming their power and their
Mm.
power, sexuality, and leadership. And one of the posts, one of our readers posted as well, is make sure you don't have sex before marriage. So in some ways, what it comes down to, and again, like you said, Gary, Ross, you can't. It's about layer by layer and sort of bit by bit, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
That we have been taught in this human experience to look outside of ourselves for a partner, for the authority, for leadership outside. And so when we're doing that, and again, growing up in the Christian church, that was my framework. And when I started to see, going into my teaching degree, for being a teacher in the school system, it was my sociology degree, and thinking, wow, like this is a whole lot like Christianity, these other world religions. And so that started to say, like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, there's a world outside of what I've just experienced, for my first how many decades of life. And
Mhm.
and so I think it's that same way when we do this, and what's built in through religion. And I am all for religion in the way that it supports people in coming to the truth of who they are.
Mhm.
Um,
Nice.
and so it's not about, yeah, in my experience, I moved from an experience of religion to an awareness and experience of spirituality.
Mm.
That when I left the church, it was because it was, so much that there was so much right and wrong, and so that didn't fit for me. And I said goodbye to my family because they chose to stay in that. I didn't, and so be it. It helped me
Mhm.
to find my truth, and
Yeah.
and I think that when we talk about spirit and human being separate, is that when we come into this journey of our sexual wholeness, when we recognize that there's what we have seen outside of us is God outside of us, that that maintains the level of separation which is reflected within us. When we see outside of us, as a woman, I'm to be looking for a man outside me to be my partner to complete me, I lose sight of that. Helps to reinforce the separation idea rather than God and human, masculine and feminine, all within.
Hmm.
And so
So
it's this journey.
how do you work with individuals? Like what's your process? And like, I dropped the link, but where can people get in touch with you to find out more if they're a right fit for you, if you're a right fit for them?
For sure. I think I have my profile page is on the Trusted Bodywork site that really gives a
Hmm.
good snapshot of what I offer. And there's lots of testimonials there of people of all ages and couples, all genders that are there. So it gives a sense of what people came to me for.
So I've dropped that in the comments
Yeah,
as well as your
great.
Calendly. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And for a discovery call. So, I offer all
Mhm.
sorts of different what I'll call programs. And that's where it's to be able to find out where's each person at, which one fits for them so that they can, whether it's to dive right in or it's to, a step by step. I just really honor where people are at. It's not a matter of, well, it's one way or the other, because that's what I grew
Mm.
up in. And I've come to understand there's not one way or the other. It's just what is the truth and the peace for you right now, and how can I best serve and support you in your journey?
And that's kind of been the premise to our teaching as well, is that, people will say that it's one way or the other. And like, well, okay, well, first of all, where did that one way come from?
Yeah,
And how do you define it? And did you know there's a possibility of another way
yeah,
and such? And that's it. And that's not necessarily saying this is the way, it's just saying, let's just open up our thinking, let's just expand and say,
mm-hmm.
there's these other things that are out there. Well, again, the one of the reasons why you're here, it's just
Yeah,
like, this is something that I think people holds a lot of people back, destroys relationships,
mm-hmm.
creates a lot of unhappiness, and
Yeah,
and just absolutely, drowns joy in people's lives,
mm-hmm.
because they don't think that they can express themselves the way that they really want to.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
very
then you
true.
have experts like yourself that say, well, yeah, you can, and let me show you some different ways that this can happen.
Exactly, exactly. What I find that's very, very common is with anybody that comes to me, often again, it's that reconnection to their own sexuality. So for some people, where I start is it's a program. It goes. It's usually about 8 weeks to 3 months, and it's I call it their PEP portal. PEP is stands for Personal Erotic Practice,
Mm.
and that way to connect to themselves. They've been so busy thinking and believing and reaching for they don't know about themselves. So let's come back home to you. Let's come back and feel in your body. Let's connect to your body, to the wisdom of your body, to the pleasure in your body, to the stuckness, the numbness, those places that we're not really aware of. So it becomes this journey of coming in and feeling and connecting and finding from that place, start to explore some of their own personal erotic practice touch points. Where do they want to explore? And as they in that journey, oftentimes those programs and those conditionings are revealed. It's kind of like, wow. One woman who came to me for that, she realized that, wow, for her erotic energy shows up not so much in a sexual sense, but in her art, in her writing. It just became prolific. Another
Nice.
woman who came to me, and that was, she actually signed up for my year program and the first part of it was for that PEP portal, to connecting to herself. She came from, after 14 years, and she's, in her 50s now, after 14 years, beginning at age 4, of sexual abuse by her father. So, so that's been this amazing journey where she is now feeling at levels like even, the sand on her feet, to be able to feel the pleasure and the joy that has been
Mm.
numbed and shut down for all of these years. So there's so many different things that when people arrive to me, we do it. There are some women, but mostly it's men, that arrive to me again with the idea of premature ejaculation or the erectile dysfunction, that as we start to really tune into that, what they are asking for is not only that feeling, but to be in service to. How can I be there? And it's not just a matter of the sexual, but into that place of surrender to the feminine, to their wife, their girlfriend, to the feminine. And those are men often that I work with in a domination submission perspective, to allow them to just really sink into. These are men often that come from high positions of in their work, in their career, where they are in control, they're in charge of things, and they're just saying, I just want to surrender, I just want to let go of control. And so it allows them to step into that place of surrender to the feminine. And that's where it was through one of these men who who came to me through my work as a dom, that allowed him to just really, it allowed me to see that parallel of that male, masculine energy in submission to, in service to the feminine, which is the human in service to the divine, or
Mhm.
the divine shaping, and saying, this is what I choose, that shows up in the human experience.
Mhm.
And so to be able to be in this place of supporting that, which is just to be able to see that profound parallel or mirroring, if you will, of that journey of how it shows up in a male female domination submission position, or not position, but experience, mirroring the whole divine human experience. And I think that that's where the dark night of the soul is often a part of that awakening in the journey of spiritual awakening. The dark night of the soul, letting go of the identity, coming back to what you asked about, Gary, is where that identity is, letting go of
That's awesome.
that sense of identity, to realize that we as humans are these instruments, these vessels for the divine to flow. And the sexual is a part of that, to be able to tap into that exquisite experience as sexual erotic beings
Yeah, because
alive.
we lock so much into our sexuality being our identity, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
Mhm.
then if you've been taught bad or negative about sexuality, then you as an entity is bad. Then I mean, all those things are stacked on there, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's awesome.
Especially if you
Um,
start to think about it or whatever, you
yeah.
start your thoughts start going in that direction, and then you're like, then that conditioning comes back and says, no, 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 bad person, bad person.
yeah,
Okay.
very true.
Yeah.
Gary, were you going to read that question?
Yeah, yeah. So we got a question on this from Kalua. I hope I pronounced that properly. How do you work with someone who is ready to learn slash unlearn when their partner is not? Great question.
Beautiful question.
That
Yes.
absolutely. Um, that's a profoundly beautiful and beautiful question. It comes down to in your own experience, because it's not a head thing, it's not a cognitive thing. And I put in one of the comments as well to the post yesterday is that I'm hoping that some of the things that I share are not only inspirational but are transformational, in the sense of we can hear these things, but what it comes down to, it's a felt body experience. And that's where the somatics come in, is I can think, oh, I'm going to let go of that program, I can let go of that shame, but until it's felt and experienced in the body, it's still going to be at play. So that's where in terms of the question, how do I work with people? I take people with whatever's showing up. Maybe this is what you want to focus on today. And sometimes it can be, oh, I just had a fight with my partner. Okay, let's start there. Let's feel into that. And we start this journey of feeling in, feeling in, feeling in to those cores where maybe some of these old programs start to be revealed. Okay, can we feel into that? Can we tap into and reclaim the power that's there? that has been shut down and hidden. And I talk about it as treasures. Like, it's not this, oh, we have this cumbersome journey to go through and let's, it's, no, we're on a treasure hunt. Let's really celebrate, even though sometimes it feels hard and it feels like, wow, this is heavy. It's kind of like, okay, can you stay with it? Can you stay with? Because often the heavier the heavier the feeling, it's showing that there's that much, that it's the equivalent, if you will, of that much power and wholeness that's been hidden, ready now to be revealed and experienced.
So when you work with someone like that and they go back to a partnership where the
Mm-hmm.
other part is not interested or not ready or not at the place where they need to do those, how do you work with them
Mm-hmm.
for that dynamic?
That's a great one. There's multiple tools that I do have, and so there's that feeling. There's looking at the thoughts that come up, and how
Mhm.
can we look at those thoughts that keep us stuck in our things? How do we look at the things that are coming up, and we judge? So there's judgment right away. There's a sensation to that. So we're starting to tap into, again, those intricate and sometimes very subtle feelings that we have. And I look at it as well is whatever's around us is often the piece that's mirroring back to us the part that we're not able to see in ourselves. So get excited, get excited
Mhm.
if you're agitated, irritated, bugged by what's happening around you or by your partner, because it's saying, okay, can I feel into that? Can I see any aspect of that in myself, or is it just that irritation that's showing up, that's showing in here? Can I feel it? Can I feel it? Because often, that thing about when we blame or point out, right? When we point, there's one finger there, but there's three fingers pointing back. So as long as we're doing that, as long as we're in a place of blame or judging what's outside of us, and judging means good or bad. Something is better than me, therefore there's something wrong here. Something is worse than, there's something, I'm better here. So it's being able to tap into all of that. So I say get excited when there's something that's going on outside of you that's feeling hard or challenging, because there's that opportunity to keep coming back home more and more and more. And when it no longer is bothering, where it's no longer seeming a struggle outside, that's when you can come from that place of clarity, of kind of, maybe it's the invitation to, hey, I'd like to share with you some of the things I've been going through. I would like to explore this. Are you game for it?
Cool.
And but I think part of the question is, wonder if they're not game for it. Wonder if they're you have an individual who wants so badly to express themselves in a different manner than what they are accustomed to, or they
Mm-hmm.
have been. But their
Yeah.
partner is just like, no, I just want, what you just said. I just want missionary. That's it. Don't,
Yeah.
don't bring any of that stuff in.
Yeah.
But this other person is going, I really need a different type of expression. And we've all heard it at times when there's infidelity in a relationship because the person's like, I couldn't get what I wanted from my spouse, my
Right.
partner, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So what would a person do or say? Because they've already been consulting with you, there's like,
Yeah.
okay, now I really know there's even more out there than I thought and such. And I love my wife or my girlfriend, or I love them beyond anything, and I want to bring us both into this. Where do
Mm-hmm.
they start with that?
Hmm. Um, if couples are open to it, I start with a consultation with myself, and even sometimes a series of sessions, and from there we can start to explore. One of my programs, it's called Sex Like Food, which is really looking at, when we look at how we do sex, how we do food. What if we could do sex like we do food? We talk about it. We have cooking shows. We have recipe books. We eat together. All of those various things. What if we could do sex like we do food? And again, to hear that, it's kind of like, I get that. And then the body. So as we take people through the different elements of that, and then to be able to allow any conditioning. So that's one of the places that we can start to find out where are some of their things similar and where are they different. For some, it's about reestablishing consent. And in there, I take them through what's called, what I call the touch of consent, where it's, and again, I say consent is a feeling. It's not a concept. It's not what it looks like, sounds like. It's a feeling. And it's when it feels like, okay, I'm here. And from that place, then we can have choice and we can make decisions. So, and sometimes through, not being honored growing up, like come and say goodbye to grandma, she's leaving. I don't want to, I'm watching my show, or I'm coloring, or I'm playing. Come and say goodbye to grandma. Those kinds of things, that, well, grandma's gonna, she looks sad, or you might not see her again, she might die before she comes back. So all of a sudden we override that child's innate sense of what is right for them in that moment. And by taking them through various pieces together, it allows them to establish a level of communication and reconnection at a much deeper level, even if they've had a great relationship at such, that to take them to this level, there's something real profound, that they see each other, they hear each other in a whole different way. Sometimes that allows them to, okay, I get that. I will do that for you. It's not something I would choose, but I'll do this for you. I'll give it a try because I know that's something you would like. Or would you do this with me? So it opens up a level of communication. Sometimes there are people who it becomes a place where, okay, you want this and let's talk about it. They can maybe step into maybe an open relationship where one partner says, I don't really feel like this, I value this, and I'm okay for you to go and experience this and explore this with other people. We have our parameters, and this is what's what. I remember one partner saying to his wife is, go and have all the sexual experiences you want. If it starts to get emotionally connected, let me know, because that's where we are our own unit. That's where it would affect us. But go and explore all of those things you want to do. There are some women who they have gone into a place where what they each wanted was just totally different, and what seemed a catastrophe in terms of them, their relationship as they knew it, to shift, they were able to transform it into a whole thing where each of them could be having what they wanted, and they stayed together as parents for their children. And in my own case, when it came time for me, through my becoming a sexological bodywork, and I was going to be having my hands on people, that my first husband, that did not work for him. My former husband said, that doesn't work for me. And he said, if staying in this marriage works for you, I'm here with you. If not, I bless you and encourage you to go and be true to you. As I felt into it, it was just kind of, I needed to go. So we got unmarried. He continues to, we're still connected and supportive of one another. And so there's all kinds of things. So is there any one way? No, there's no one right way. And sometimes it is that journey for people to find their way as they each. And I remember with my husband, my former husband, saying, why can't we both be true to ourselves and stay together? And it just wasn't to be, And so so I can't say, all I can do is support people in being true to themselves, coming back into that place and having a place where they can connect and communicate and be honoring of what each person in the relationship chooses.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah, what
Great.
you kind of just demonstrated there was it's not a this or that, right? It's a this, there's all these options now pick from the menu, right? And you talk about the food, you pick from the menu and yeah, I think that's a great analogy, the sex like food thing. I think that for me just made some cool shifts for me. So that's a cool metaphor for sure.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that there's definitely been, in the last 5-10 years, there's definitely been some shifts and movements in the direction of your type of work, seeing more of it out there for sure.
Yeah.
I'm seeing, stuff on Netflix, and there's different stuff that's opening up people's ideas to different aspects of spirituality and I mean sexuality and it not just being about the physical. So I think that's really great in for for your line of work and moving in that direction, that
Mm-hmm.
trending anyways. Um, what are you seeing in your clientele? Are you seeing more variety of people showing up? Are you seeing because at first jump, I think if someone is new to this, they're gonna think, oh, it's all the hippie people that are coming to her so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think just to kind of give people an idea, just the range of that, to make it okay for them, right? I think people need,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay that if you're a accountant, it's okay that if you're a you're someone in a role where normally you should have this stereotype, and it's okay to step out of that.
Very true. Very true. Yes, and absolutely a range. Because again, we all come from sex, and all of us are in that whole range of, of careers and things in the world, so it's there we are. So absolutely, there are people that are homemakers, people that are teachers, people that are have been directors of huge companies, people that have been preachers kids. There are ones who are leaders of their own movements, that even as they are leading people, they are getting support from me to help them, rise even further in their leadership and their support. So yeah, there's no block. There's no, it's these people. Really, what seems to be the common denominator is people wanting to connect into their sexuality. They often have a sense that there's something more. There's something more here that I either had a sense of before and I don't know how to recapture it. Or it's kind of there's something here that I've never really had a grasp of, and there's something more, and I want to explore and experience it. I want to connect into that aspect of me. And I think that's a big part of it. And again, the people who that come wanting to tap into that, say that BDSM, that DS experience of sinking in and really feeling. And what's really fabulous is, in some ways, for men as well, that's one context that they can be in that allows them in that context to feel. Whether it's the feeling of the floggers, whether it's the feeling of whatever's being done to them in a consensual way, is that it's allowing them to feel, because often when they go into the other things, they're up in their heads and they have to feel, that part of that feeling part of them is shut down so that they can do their jobs. And what they start to realize is, by coming into connection with their feelings and their cognitive mental capacities, it starts to bring them into a place of experiencing and being in the world in a way that is unparalleled.
Hmm, nice.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. Well, that kind of comes up to the end of our hour, which
Wow.
went by
Hmm,
really quickly.
very
It
quickly.
did. It did.
So I'm going to ask you one last question is, what's your vision for the world regarding romance and sex and erotica? And how do you see yourself playing a role in this vision?
Mm. I think it's really about people living free, that living erotically alive and free, and to be able to have that aspect as well of that spiritual, that they're not disconnected from the spiritual aspect of the are, and from there being alive, because it takes away that whole aspect of trying to this quest to connect to. It's just kind of like it's all there. Live from that place. And so for me, it really becomes this journey of supporting people in helping them to move in their direction by seeing what's in there that's ready to, the treasures are there that have been hidden, those old programs, the things that have kept them feeling restricted, in a place of shame, can't do, won't do. It's just kind of like, let's tap into it, find what's there, and then living in a way that's true for them. Again, that true you, erotically alive.
Fantastic. So let's give everybody one last. So we put some links in the comments,
Okay.
Mhm.
but where and how can they get a hold of you? I'm sure that we get a lot of people that come back on our replays.
Okay.
And where's a good place so that they can get more answers to their questions?
Hmm. Thank you. My email is lorna@lornagale.com. So that would be, I think, that's my email there. If they were to go onto the Trusted Bodywork site as well, there's a place there they can connect through to me, and it comes through. I know that that's how they had a chance to read through about my work and my perspective, and that would be, and then the Calendly link.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Gary, any last questions from yourself?
No, thanks for coming on and taking the time with us. And I think we could have totally gone a lot longer, but
Yes, we
um,
could.
We can go for a sequel. That'd be fun.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
That's it.
for sure. Again, yeah, thank you so much. And it was really some great info for us and everybody here today. So thanks, Lorna.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, everyone, for joining
Thank you,
us.
Russ.
And next week, we have Gail and Gregory Hogue, and they're going to talk about sacred geometry with us and answering
nice.
more of those spectacular questions.
Beautiful.
So thank you very much. We will see everyone next week. And if you're on the replay, still put your questions in the comments. We do check the comments regularly. And if there's something that we can't answer, we'll forward it on to Lorna.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Farewell, everyone.
Bye now.
See you next week.
Well, you made it to the end of this interview, and that tells us one thing. You liked what you heard, and maybe, just maybe, you might want more of the same. So be sure to hit subscribe and ring that bell. As a matter of fact, you might be ready to step things up for yourself. You see, everyone that you've heard us interview for the Infinite Wisdom series all have one thing in common. They've harnessed their own potential, claimed their badass self, and raised their game and leveled up. Whether it be in business, personal, romantic, for whatever aspect of life you choose, there's always a next level. So we encourage you to rekindle your passion and purpose, step it up, and register for our next free 5-day Badass Challenge. The link is below, and we are excited to see you take a leap into a new reality that only you can imagine.